Hi. I decided to choose for my youth night, the theme is going to be from the beginning to the end, the greatest love story ever told. Because in the book of Revelation, Jesus says, I am the Alpha, the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. So what better message to bring to a youth night than the whole gospel story? Creation, the fall, redemption, and restoration. And even as part of my testimony, I can see where those things were shown to me throughout my life. But it wasn't until recently that I experienced restoration or began to experience restoration. So I think it is imperative and very important that we let our youth hear this whole story. So my testimony is I grew up in a non-Christian home. Not that my parents didn't believe in God, but they just never took us to church. We never read the Bible. I never heard them talk about God. We did pray before we ate our dinner at night, but that was the extent of Christianity in our home. We celebrated Christmas, but it was Santa Claus, and even though we knew what it was about, that wasn't the focus. And so I always found a way to get to church, and my dad owned a Bible, not that I saw him ever read it, but he would let me get the Bible and I would take it to my room, and I can remember reading the book of Genesis and understanding that in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, and then he created man, and then he created Eve out of Adam's side, and I understood all that, and I understood that God told him not to eat that tree in the center of the garden, but they still did it, and because of that, then sin entered into the world. I understood all that at a young age, and as I began to grow in years, I would go to church with friends or neighbors or even the church bus. I would find a way to go to church. And then when I got in high school, my best friend's parents were Christians, and I spent a lot of time at their house, went to church a lot with them. My home life was not very good. My dad was an alcoholic, and it was really bad in my high school years, and my mom she just wasn't there emotionally, and neither was my dad. So I spent a lot of time at their house and got to see what it was like to be in a home where there was love, and people genuinely loved each other, and they really lived what they believed. They lived out what they taught. They lived out what they said, and they were always so patient and loving and kind, and always took time to explain things to me when I'd ask them, well, what do they mean in the sermon today? And Miss Berry would always tell me, what it meant, and I'll never forget the impact that she had on my life. So as I graduated high school, I moved away from my hometown. I quit going to church and just became very promiscuous. I was living for myself. Everything was about me. I was working to get a new car. I was learning I could go to this bodybuilding gym and work out and start, eating really healthy, and everything was about me. God had a different plan. One day I went to work. My boss said, you're not working over there today, you're going to work over here. I worked as a server in a restaurant. I had never worked that set of tables before, and I never worked them again after that night. I waited on a man who was all by himself, and when he left, I went to pick up my tip, and there was a Simple Plan of Salvation track there. And I remember feeling so excited that this man cared enough about where I was going to spend eternity, and that he left me that information. 2 weeks later, I found myself in church, giving my life to Christ. And my life changed from that point. And as I continued to get older, I went through a lot of difficulties, a lot of trials, a lot of things because of my own doing still. I just had so much baggage, so much insecurities, so much from my childhood, but I didn't know how to overcome these things. I would try this and I would try that. I'd go to this counselor and that counselor, and I could just never get past those things. So I understood creation. I understood the fall. I understood the redemption message that Jesus died on the cross for me. I understood all that. I just didn't know how to fix this other stuff in my life. How to get over some of these things, the hurts that I'd been through, the pain that I had suffered. Until I met this lady a few years ago, who's now one of my very dearest friends. She really taught me about God's love. Not that I didn't know He loved me, but to really understand it and to know that He wants to see me whole, and that healing, that restoration is there. It's for me. And I began to understand about grace and its importance, and that who I am in Christ, that my past does not define me. That is not who I am. So it's taken me over 30 years of my Christian life to really get to this part of the gospel in my life, and that's the restoration portion. So I feel that this is such an awesome message that I'm going to be teaching that night, that I want everyone to hear, especially the youth of our world today. They need to know that this is the greatest love story that's ever been told.